Welcome to In the Hot Seat with the Tenney Group. I'm Spencer Tenney. It's good to be with you. Has the freight industry become a hotbed for fraud? My next guest says yes and has a possible solution for us. With us today in the hot seat, Michael Caney, Chief Commercial Officer of Highway. Michael, welcome to the hot seat.
Hey, man, it's good to see you.
Good to see you. Now, I can't wait to unpack so many things that are going on right now in our space. Yep. But before we jump in, just take 20, 30 seconds and tell us a little bit about the work you're doing at Highway.
Yeah, Highway's a great company. We focus squarely on this concept of motor carrier identity, right? And so our early thesis was that freight brokers and carriers need a safe, secure digital way to connect. But what we saw early was that there was the core problem was identity. Like with all the products in the marketplace, no one had successfully solved the problem of really answering three questions for a freight broker, which is who's the human being coming into a freight broker's environment? Like, where do they sit? Like, who are they? Like, who's Spencer? Where does he sit? Is he actually the carrier? Right. So it's the second thing. Are you really a carrier? Are you a chameleon carrier? And do you have the right equipment to haul the stuff you say you're going to do? And so we think that you first have to prove out those three things. Now, if we do that, we then can provide between brokers and carriers a seamless single sign-on, sign in with Facebook, sign in with your Apple ID type experience where they can engage in B2B commerce in a trusted environment. And so that's first you have to solve the identity problem, and then you can move on to connecting and doing commerce. And if you think about it, like that's been the thing for a long time, like digital freight matching.
Yeah.
What we've seen is that digital freight matching actually created fraud.
Provide a little context here. So we have a problem. Can we quantify that? What type of economic problem is this? Can you define it for us?
Oh man. Yeah, it's billions. I mean, I wish I had the numbers. I mean, if anyone's looking for resources, like the best resource on the strategic theft piece is CargoNet. They keep all the data on this, but it's now potentially in the billions. And strategic cargo theft year over year is up 1,300%. I think an interesting statistic to evaluate would be FreightWaves put out a graphic recently of new hires, like new MC number entrants into the market. And it's more than a hockey stick. It's like Everest, right, Spencer? I mean, it's like, and I guarantee you, if you were to plot the rise of cargo theft with that curve, they would coincide.
All right. So that's the problem, as if the freight industry needed another problem to deal with.
Right.
So like outside of Highway, like what are the potential responses? Like what are people doing to combat this presently?
Oh man, that's a good question. It typically lives in crowdsourced tribal knowledge decision trees. Right. So if you are sitting in a freight broker that doesn't have Highway or any kind of LSP, 3PL, whatever you want to call them, there's typically a decision tree. And it goes something like this, like who's the carrier? Let me go check the government data. And we can talk about why that's a big problem in a minute. But let me just go see, do they have authority? And do they have active insurance? And then I'm going to check 3 or 4 websites and maybe a super secret text group or email group. Like all of those things exist. Like, does anybody know this guy? They had a problem with him. And it goes something like that. And it's very tribal. And it's very kind of sniff testy. And it's not very data driven. And I did it. I can say that I was an operator for 18 years. Yeah. I can say it because I did it. I had the Cadillac vendor that did all the insurance monitoring, but there was no fraud prevention. Like prior to Highway, it was about getting the packet done, the carrier packet done. Right. And so it's checklists. I mean, I said to someone the other day, like, imagine if you worked for a really big company and the cybersecurity protocols were a Word document pinned up in your cubicle. And before Highway, that's how we treated cargo.
Wow.
I got a $150,000 load. Let me run through the checklist. I mean, I was in college last week, and today I work in a freight broker. Let me run through this checklist and see if I can give you $250,000 worth of cargo.
Wow.
That's how it worked. Like, that's literally how it worked.
I mean, do you have are people even doing that? I mean, are they actually? Okay.
Yeah. There's some, like, I have some friends that are very good. They've built some proprietary stuff to try to check truck counts in FMCSA. And I mean, they've got complex rules around if the guy's in this geography, but there's no best practice. It's everybody kind of trying to build their own. And if you're if you're a $500 million or so company, you can afford that, you can do it. But, Spencer, the majority of freight moves on small and medium sized brokers and small carriers.
Right.
So, I mean, I want to say that there are folks that have done the best they can with what they have. Like they care. It's just been really hard.
I'm just trying to wrap my mind around just the volume of what you just described. It is pretty incredible. So in response to that, like what are fleets doing to kind of modernize themselves in response to this significant challenge?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of what I kind of call the wink wink. Like, hey, I've got 10 trucks, but maybe I'll give it to my cousin who's an owner operator. And there's just been this idea, and actually it used to work just fine. I mean, for the longest time, generally speaking, brokers try to do the right thing, and generally speaking, motor carriers try to do the right thing. Like, give them the benefit of the doubt. But in recent years, the bad actors have learned to exploit that. Hey, a broker's okay with if I just tell them it's on an owner operator, right? And so when you and I talked about modernization, the thing that I was talking about is it would be really weird if you walked into a bank or if you did diligence on a company and like, hey, Spencer, I'm a good guy. Just take my word for it. Like, just give me $1 million in seed, man. It's going to be fun. Like, it would be really weird. And so by the same token, it's weird for a carrier to tell a broker, hey man, I've got my authority in a couple trucks. It's fine, because things have changed. Mm-hmm. And so when we think about modernization, we're simply saying, hey, like, KYC, know your customer, is really standard in any other financial transaction that a human being engages in. It's standard. It's not weird. It's not foreign. We're simply saying, hey, fleets, you've got to, motor truck carriers, like, you've got to do a better job of actually representing who you are. If you're engaging owner operators, like, you've got to expose who they are and who's insuring those trucks. The example would be, you can't have a scheduled auto policy with 3 trucks on it and inspect 20 and expect the broker to just take your word for it that there's 17 trucks out there with insurance. And that's how it's been for a long time. Like, we're just simply saying, like, you guys got to talk and be honest with each other. Like, you can't do the wink wink, it'll be fine anymore. And brokers, we used to call it okie doke. It'll be fine. Just okie doke. He'll be all right. It's not anymore. So that's kind of the modernization we're pushing for, is transparency, right?
So walk me through that, like future state. Like, what does the industry look like if let's just say 90% of the industry is functioning in the way that you just described? How would our industry be different?
Yeah, I think the future is you're going to have real-time location data that has nothing to do with tracking and tracing a load. I think a long time ago, we thought a lot about, I need to know where this load is. But the reality is, like, and like, I'm going to have some friends that get mad that I say this, that own companies in this space, but like, the shipper doesn't actually want to know where their truck is. They just want to know it's going to get there. And there's been so many problems that they've moved to micromanaging the process. And there's companies that have raised millions of dollars to try to solve that problem. But what you and I talked about, and we were at this conference together, the essential problem is trust. So what does the future look like? The future looks like some type of trusted ecosystem. Right? And you're not going to get that from a load board. You're not going to get that from some broker claiming they have the best marketplace out there. Like, you've got to have, like, multiple parties building a trusted ecosystem in the same way that banks interact with each other, in the same way that, like, the credit card systems created a trusted ecosystem for people to be able to trade. You've got to be able to put digital identity protocols in place. And what's hard about that is you're talking about bringing physical and digital together. You're talking about these physical assets that are moving all over the place with human beings that need to have some type of digital footprint to have a trusted relationship, a trusted commercial relationship. We're starting at the very basic, who's the broker, who's the carrier, can we connect them? Can they be transparent? And I think it grows from there. I was kind of a long-winded answer, but like, I don't think there's a silver bullet.
Well, I think this ecosystem vision that you just kind of described is really interesting to me. Who else would you see as part of that ecosystem to create that trust?
Man, I think there's a lot of parties, right? Like, really anybody with a financial stake, right? So think about, the largest commercial insurers. they want to have more transparency and more trust.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can you imagine what underwriters are going through right now? I mean, I bet if you talk to any commercial underwriter, like they're just going, I don't know what to do, just charge more money, because the game has changed so much in the last several years in kind of the freight boom. Like the actuary tables have to just be like, we're guessing at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's changed. And so I think anyone with a serious financial stake, right? Shippers should care. You know, one of the problems in freight technology is everyone wants to go up market and sell to shippers. Like shippers are going to somehow solve the problem. They're not. There's no single entity that's going to solve the problem. So you have to have multiple parties that want to buy into some kind of standard, right? Because if you think about the amount of money, right? There's a lot of talk about inflation in our country right now. If you just think about cargo theft, insurance premiums, the cost that gets injected into the supply chain because of nefarious activity, you and I pay for that, Spencer. When we go to the store, we pay for that. Mm. And so, like, it's insurance companies, it's shippers, it's motor carriers that already operate and have operated on a thin margin for a long time. Anybody with a financial stake, a significant financial stake, wants to work in a trusted environment.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, being a firm that views financial statements of trucking companies every day and logistics companies every day, and you see stuff like this eating away at the earnings. There's got to be changes. There's got to be changes. So let me transition. I mean, you're very deep background for you in terms of tech startups. This is a fascinating time for this fusion of freight and tech and all kinds of possibilities. What, based on what you're seeing in the marketplace, all different categories of tech, what are you seeing that really excites you, that could be transformative for our space?
Yeah, I mean, highway, I think, I got a little bit of bias,
outside of highway.
I mean, look,
no disagreement.
Yeah, no, I think highways. I think companies that are trying to take large amounts of unstructured data and put structure around them. Like, I'm really bullish on the overall kind of Triumph offering. They're a strategic partner of ours, but they're not just payments. They're, with their audit product, they're taking unstructured data and creating kind of payment networks. Now you have kind of up and coming entrants in the market like Navix. I think if you just think about all of the noise, right, Spencer, like just the people that are turning down the noise. And so I try to think of it from two places, like the user level, like what's the user experience of the freight broker sitting on the floor? Because when you look at a freight broker's financial statement, it's throughput per employee, right? Their largest expense is, I mean, if you look now at all the layoffs, right, it's labor. Mm-hmm. And so if you look at a trucking company, like what cuts the noise out for the trucking company, right? Can you take all of this data on maintenance, safety, et cetera, and help trucking companies get predictive about, like, not where you have to go out and hire the best safety guy or the best maintenance guy, right? So can you help a trucking company get more predictive about how they manage all that incremental cost? I don't know who's doing that, but I didn't spend a lot of time in trucking companies, but I've been in a couple, and it was always really interesting to me how tribal that was.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think if we can build better networks, it's the labor problem, right? Like human beings in a freight broker and the driver in the trucking company, right? The turnover, the movement of the driver is really expensive for a trucking company. The more a driver moves around, the less continuity there is in the network and how they maintain their equipment. It's really hard, right? That's where all the pennies disappear. And so I think there's companies out there trying to get at it, but I think there's a lot of folks going at low-hanging fruit, like visibility or appointment scheduling. And I just think the root is this transparent collaboration space.
Yeah.
You got to cut the noise out.
I really appreciate your perspective. There's a lot of sizzle, with freight tech. Mm-hmm. And there's also the tendency to, for this kind of sense of false success, of what's actually happening. I mean, like, how do you view success, specifically within freight tech? Like, like if you're looking at a company and you say, like, they are really doing well, both that from a performance, but also from a value, like it's not that clear. Like, how do you define it?
Yeah. I can tell you I don't define it. I don't define it based on capital raises and what companies say about themselves. I think, our kind of Jordan's thesis is we're not going to go out and beat our chest. And the reason I bring up highway is because I think it's unique. Like none of us are like these like SaaS guys from California that raise money.
Right.
Like we're operators, right? We want to solve the problem for whoever the user is. And so I think that the freight technology companies whose customers say, I mean, I can't live without that. Mm-hmm. My business was this way and now it's this way. Like that, those are the companies that are exciting. And there's only a handful. There's a lot of people trying things. And I know that in the freight technology category, there's a lot of companies that were early. It's even a young category, this whole freight supply chain thing. Now there's a lot of people trying things. But there's just not a lot of companies that when you, at least in the truckload space, that you buy something and you go, oh man, I'm really glad I have that. Yeah. There's just not that many. There's a few.
If you have a company where your customers are saying that, you're saying that like you're on the right track. That's what you want. And
yeah, I mean, I think your customer, I think we're in a space, especially in the B2B space, where just marketing messaging is changing overall. And again, man, I'm not I don't have the deep background in tech. Like I've bought a lot of tech. I've bought a lot of tech I don't like. And I've been a user of tech that didn't work. You know what I mean? Like that's where I've been sold a bunch of stuff. And so I just sit in the space where like, I want to give a customer such a great experience that they tell my story. Mm. Like, I don't want to have to tell my story. I want the story I tell to be like, hey, here's what we try to do. Here's what we believe in. Ask this guy if I did a good job. And if I can't point to that, we're failing. Mm-hmm. Like we obsess over that. Like we obsess over, are we responsive? Are we delivering? Do we keep our commitments? And I think that's what technology companies have to do. The narrative, it's bloated, man. Like it's the old, like Lucy, my old boss used to say, it's like Lucy with the football. Like you keep telling me and then you move the football when I get there. Like you tell me it's going to work and then I show up and I buy it and you give me all these buzzwords and then it doesn't work. I can't get it into my workflow. People won't adopt it.
Yeah. I'm curious how you think about this from a, put your chief commercial hat off, chief commercial officer hat on, with so much tech to consider to solve, endless problems. Yeah. How do you think about differentiation with what you're doing?
Oh man. Again, I think first of all, for us, what we do just is different. Mm-hmm. If you think about the carrier onboarding experience, there's a lot of vendors that will give what we call the green check mark. The carrier wasn't in my network as a broker. Now they're in my network and I can use them. What we talk about is fundamentally, how do we get there? And we get the carrier to the broker in a very different place. Because of how we get there, there's a lot of additional data and value that they get from our process. So just by default, it's different, right? And so when I think about differentiation, we think about pulling cost and friction away. So there's multiple ways we do that. One, we just give faster and more secure onboard times. So like for us, like we brag about turning about 20% of a broker's network off. We typically find about 15 or 20% of a broker's existing network are actually bad actors or potentially problematic actors.
That is incredible. I had no idea the number was that big.
It's bad. Again, it's just the law. It's just large numbers, right? If you go back and look at the number of new entrants in the marketplace and you look at the totality of motor carriers, like it makes sense. The number, I mean, specifically, it's between 15 and 19%.
Wow.
Both at like a macro level and a broker level. We look at the data, we obsess over, we look at it every day. And so, that's one thing that's different. Like we don't let everybody in. Like we don't, the old kind of way was let everybody in and then figure out who the bad guys are. Nobody would say that, but that's what we did. And again, I can say we, not as like this condescending freight jerk. I did it. Like I found, I don't know where it is. I found this paper from 2017 where Locked-in Insurance came in and said all the bad words to me about how bad my compliance process was and gave me this checklist. That was their answer. Here's your checklist. I was cleaning out an old box. And so we just say, hey, like nobody gets in. We're going to be the hardest target, right? So we have 3 design principles. We're going to reduce total surface area for a broker, total surface area of risk. We're going to be the absolute hardest target for a bad actor. And like we believe in good guys and bad guys, sheep and goats. We want to keep the goats out, only let the sheep in. And so we just have a completely different approach, right?
Yeah.
The second thing from differentiation standpoint is we don't stop there. Anybody who would claim to be a competitor, that's kind of all they do. We're getting into like lane level security. All of our data can be consumed via API. People build procurement strategies around what we do. We have a single sign-on product. Like our single sign-on product can live in a freight broker's environment and serve as like an Okta SAML type solution. Where anytime a freight broker wants to, or a carrier wants to engage with a freight broker, they sign in with Highway. It's just like a sign in with Google or Facebook button. All that metadata flows in, and the freight broker can engage with that carrier based on their actual digital and physical information. So there's no like, hey, Mr. Carrier, what do you do? It's like, no, you signed in. I see everything you do.
Yeah.
Here's the loads you should be looking at. Not sign into my load board and look for something based on your equipment, based on who you are. Here's what you should be looking at. Right? And the transaction's safe. There's a lot of large brokers who built these digital platforms and that's where the theft is happening, on large digital platforms.
Couple questions, and we'll wrap things up here. Rough market. I mean, it's not, the freight market's cyclical, but it's been a little bit dicey, especially for brokers and so I'm curious, what advice do you give to folks that are kind of coming out and looking towards the next positive cycle? What advice would you give to folks who to protect their margins, to set themselves up to be successful in this next cycle? What advice would you give?
Yeah. So one of my favorite business books, Spencer, is Not Good to Great. It's the follow-up, Great by Choice, written by Jim Collins. And I think, one of the things he talks about is comparison companies to other companies. And one of the biggest themes that you could walk away from that whole book is there's a lot of discipline in the operating companies that go the distance. And so what we saw in the boom is, just a lot of order taking, like people just thinking they were printing money, and discipline went out the window. So like I have a friend that runs a consulting business and his clients are growing, total volume and total customers. Their revenue's down, margins are down, but when you go from, these are mid-sized brokers, right? That ship with 80, 150 customers a month. And now they ship with 200 customers a month. So when they come out of this cycle, like what do they have? They've got a much bigger business.
That's right.
Because they've maintained discipline. And so I think the biggest thing is like, if you're an operator and you're running at break even or just positive, man, what areas of your business did you lose discipline in that you need to regain discipline, right? It's easy to get overconfident in a freight boom, right? But like for an entrepreneur, especially, because that's mostly what you're dealing with, right? Entrepreneurs, founders. What was the thing that got you from zero to where you are? Like revisit that discipline, right? Revisit that work ethic and that culture. Like get back to discipline. That's always the answer.
I love that. Hey, last question. And I love the book reference there. You've worked for a lot of leaders, and you mentioned a special one, even within your team there at Highway. Yep. I'm curious, what are some leadership pitfalls that you could share with our audience that if they avoid, they will help themselves be a better leader?
Yeah, man, I'm just thinking like the first thing that came up, they always say like the first thing that comes up, say it. Like I think the biggest pitfall, and probably it comes up because I've experienced it and it's probably the thing I've been the most guilty of. Arrogance will kill you. Arrogance will kill you. It'll kill your team. Arrogance and like just being incongruent, right? You can't like at Highway, like Jordan doesn't have a bunch of values hanging all over the place. Like they literally just come out of who he is. He carries that culture, and so we do it. So like be responsive, own your mistakes, own the outcome. Like that's just what we didn't sit down and have like a strategy meeting about what our core values are going to be and go put them on LinkedIn. So I would say like if you're a leader, and the other thing I would say about Jordan is like why I love working for him. He's not afraid to say he's wrong. He's not afraid to call me and go, what do you want to do? What do you think? Like he's my boss. He's CEO of Highway. He can make any decision he wants.
Yeah.
And like when he hires people to do something, he lets them do it. I have worked for people where I got hired to do something and I've had to say, do you want me to go home? Because I thought you hired me to do this. And so like be humble and empower your people. The biggest thing you can do is say one thing in the marketplace and then be completely arrogant. And I say that because I've harmed people, man. I've done that. When I was early in my leadership career, oh my God, I would have hated to work for me at certain times. Like I just look back and I'm just like, oh my God, what did you do? Like it's so embarrassing. Like even when I think back about some of my things, like so embarrassing, so terrible.
Well, listen, those are some pearls of wisdom there, and I appreciate the humility sharing that, because I think we're all on a journey. For those that are, wearing that weight of responsibility of leadership, it is a privilege and it is a journey for sure. Hey, you guys have some awesome things going on at Highway. I really appreciate you sharing the problems within our space and the developments going on within your group. That's going to do it for us here in the Hot Seat, sir. We will see you next time.